Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Today is April 21st, and we have two really cool proclamations. The first one is a proclamation recognizing Building Safety Month by Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez with, I don't see him here, the county executive. Let's imagine that he's here. All right, if anybody who came for this proclamation, please come forward. You guys, come in. Spread the love here. Spread the love. Don't be shy. Good morning, everybody. Today's Building Safety Month celebration. Let's put it that way. And I have the great honor of being with our public safety team and DPS and the housing community office, and everybody's here. I'm going to allow you guys to please introduce yourselves. And for one moment, I thought you were Mark Elrich, but no, you're not. There he is. Great timing. I looked at him and I thought it was you. You made it on time. Great promotion. On to December, though. Okay, so, Mark, can you get closer, please? Thank you all for being here today. I have had 3 cups of coffee and no food, so bear with me. We're getting, like this. We're getting an early start to celebrating Building Safety Month just a bit ahead of May, right? Because when it comes to safety, it is always the right time to recognize it. So we can do this every single day of the year. That's the whole point. This Building Safety Month, we're proud to celebrate the safe and resilient buildings that support our community every single day. Our homes, schools, and workplaces are more than just buildings. They are spaces that help our community thrive in good times and protect us during emergencies. Today, we celebrate the incredible professionals who make that possible, from inspectors and engineers to builders and tradespeople who work year-round to keep Montgomery County safe and thriving for all. This year's theme, Built to Last, reminds us to keep pushing for stronger, safer, and more resilient buildings for our communities. Thank you to everyone for joining us today to celebrate Building Safety Month and the people and partnerships that keep Montgomery County safe. It's a great honor to be here with the County Executive, Mark Elrich, and I'm going to turn it to him.
Thank you. So when you're building something, you definitely want it to last. So Built to Last is a good theme for this. Montgomery County and our Permitting Services Department, building safety is a priority, and we have our permit technicians, plan reviewers, and inspectors and field supervisors and fire marshals. They work every day to keep buildings that where we live and work and where we learn, make them safe and make sure that they stay safe. DPS is Montgomery County's front line of building safety, and it works to prevent issues before they occur, from structural failures to electrical hazards to fire risks. And this work helps protect lives and property here. Thoroughly, timely, and professional inspections, DPS ensures that construction complies with safety and sustainability standards. And when it comes to building safety, residents can do their part at home by obtaining permits for work as required by code, getting inspections to ensure installation to code compliant, and keeping up with property maintenance for their structures and systems. And I think the county still has deck guidance for all those people who go to Home Depot and are going to build their deck anyway. At least we're making available what you have to do if you're going to build it. I actually think that's important. As part of Building Safety Month outreach campaign, DPS encourages homeowners to schedule a free residential deck maintenance inspection. Begins May 1st. You can call 311 to request your appointment over DPS website to make online. And the program is limited to 300 participants. So there are 300 decks that can get inspected. get your deck in line, and somebody will come out and take a look at it. Also this year, residents and residential contractors can get their questions answered about their home projects at a residential permitting open house, and that's going to be Wednesday, May 20th in the auditorium at the Executive Office Building from 4:30 to 8 o'clock. I appreciate the time because that means people can do it after they're finished with work. And the event will feature educational outreach and building safety for adults and kids and information about DPS programs and services. Also be sure to check out the DPS podcast during Building Safety Month and hear directly from DPS subject matter experts about their work in the permitting department. One of the new episodes covers decks, patios, and other outdoor projects. Only 15 minutes, and it's packed with tips about when you need a permit, when you don't, and what inspectors are looking for when inspecting decks. So for more about building safety, visit the DPS website. We have a great team, and I want to welcome DPS Director Rabia Sabakan up next to tell us a little bit more.
Good morning. Thank you, County Executive. Thank you, Chair Manny Gonzalez. It is that time of year. May is Building Safety Month, and we live for this. We know that this is what we do throughout the year, and it's an opportunity to let our message on building safety resonate throughout our community. Now, I think the thing that I want to mention, just look behind me, look to the left, look to the right. This personifies the county. We're one government, from our county council to our county executive to all the departments. We are charged with protecting our citizens, our businesses, our visitors, and that's what we do throughout the year. It's only Building Safety Month that gives us that opportunity to let it amplify, let that message amplify. And we do this with excitement, with passion, because we love serving our community. Many times, we deal with enacting laws and measures and policies in reaction to unfortunate events, and we've seen them with the Arrive, with the Rock Creek flooding. But many times, it's really about Building Safety Month is an opportunity to be proactive, and that's what we really love about this. It's an opportunity to do the outreach, to send that message to, hey, building safety is important, built to last. What a theme. That's about resilience, and that's a big part of our mission. We want structures, lives to last and maintain its resiliency, and that's really the message we want to resonate today. So thank you for the opportunity to let this light shine on Building Safety Month. Thank you.
The exciting part of the day, we're going to read the proclamation. The County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas Montgomery County, Maryland recognizes that our growth and strength depend on the safety and essential role that our homes, buildings, and infrastructure play in everyday life and protect us when disasters strike. And
I'm going this way. Whereas our confidence in these structures is made possible by the dedication of vigilant professionals, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design experts, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work tirelessly year-round to ensure safe and sustainable construction of buildings. And
whereas employees of the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services collaborate with our county departments, including the Fire and Rescue Service, Housing and Community Affairs, and the Department of Transportation, to uphold modern building codes and standards that safeguard the places where we live, learn, work, and play. And
whereas these codes and standards include critical protection against fires and natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildfires, floods, and earthquakes. And
whereas the International Code Council and dedicated code officials play a vital role in ensuring safe, sustainable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And
whereas the 2026 theme, Built to Last, challenges us all to recognize the importance of durability, safety, and sustainability in the built environment, locally, globally, and whereas communities everywhere are encouraged to reaffirm their commitment to improving building safety, resilience, and economic investment, and to recognize the essential services provided by local and state building departments, federal agencies, and fire protection bureaus in protecting lives and property. Take it away.
Now, therefore, be resolved that the County Executive Mark Erich and the entire Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaim May 2026 in April as Building Safety Month, in Montgomery County. We encourage residents, businesses, and community organizations to join in raising awareness about building safety and its impact on a stronger, more resilient future for all. Presented on this 21st day of April in the year of 2026 by County Executive Mark Elrich and County President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, along the entire County Council. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And thank you to the entire team for making sure that Montgomery County continues to be a safe place for everybody. And that's why we embrace Building Safety Month. Now, next, we have another very exciting proclamation, probably the most exciting one today. No offense. Proclamation recognizing Therapy Animal Appreciation Month by Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez and Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom. If you're here with your little puppy, please come forward. Okay, I think I need to. Is this good for you? Hello, everyone. We're gonna start the proclamation. Good morning, everybody. I think I need to have a soft voice so I don't scare them or something. Okay, so today we are recognizing Therapy Animal Appreciation Month. What can I say? This is love right here. And I think I had never done this type of proclamation before, but when we received the request, I'm so happy. Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom said, yes, let's do it together. And here we are. It's honestly one of the most exciting things that I have done. Because my proclamations tend to be really dry, not today. Before I turn it to Council Vice President Balcom, I just want to make sure that we recognize the folks who are here. If I miss your name, please let me know. Melissa's going to speak at some point. But we have Fidos for Freedom, Fidos for Freedom, Fran Glavin. There you are. Holly Solano, Pet Partners. She is coming. She's on her way. Kelly from People, Animals, and Love. There you are. Kim from Warrior Canine Connection. There you are. Hey, thank you for being here. Ed Reed and Dogs, National Capital Therapy Dogs. There you are. Harriet from MCPS. There you are. And who did we miss? Where are you coming from?
Fighters for Freedom.
Fighter from Freedom. So I'm going to turn it to Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom now.
Oh, thank you all. Thanks for being here. I have to say, when I walked in the building and I saw these puppies, I thought, oh, wow, this is so fantastic. And that's not what I think when I walk in the building every day. But today I said, oh my gosh, this is so great. So I just want to say that it's so important to recognize Therapy Dog Month. And it's so important. It's great to have the puppies here, but it's really just as important as to have the people here. It's the people, the trainers, the volunteers, the handlers that really make this connection work. And it's such a joyous, loving, intimate relationship that you have with your dogs. And you just bring joy to the people that you see. And you're bringing joy to all of us today by having your dogs here. So we really sincerely appreciate everything that you do for our community. So thank you.
We're going to ask now Ms. Melissa Regan to please share some remarks. Yes, as a person who requested this proclamation. And I also would like to recognize that we have two members of the Board of Education. I see the President, Gracie Rivera Oven, and I see Julie Yan also here with us. Thank you for coming today. So, Melissa, if you want to. Wait.
I'm Harriet. Hi. I just want to thank all these wonderful dog and handler teams for being so kind to the students of Montgomery County Public Schools. And they work in libraries, they work in hospitals, they work in nursing homes. And they do this out of the love and the kindness of their hearts. They are volunteers and they put in countless hours. And we want to thank them from the school system and from the council. And just a big round of applause and thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Regan. I'm a social worker, and I have seen firsthand what the impact is of the therapy dog visits in all of these locations. And I wanted to just say a special thank you to the County Council and especially staff in the offices of President Fanny Gonzalez and Vice President Marilyn Balcom. So thank you so much for this recognition for these groups.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for every single thing that you do. I will be remiss if I don't mention this, but I try not to talk about my life because I'm very private. But my husband is a disabled veteran, and every now and then we as a family we do volunteer with veterans, and you always see therapy dogs in those sessions. So I just want to state how, when I received the request for this proclamation, that's the first thing that came to my mind. How important our puppies are for people, for human beings, and especially those who are going through hard times. So thank you for everything. Thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Education, we thank you for this proclamation because these dogs make a wonderful addition to making sure that the mental health for kiddos are also met.
Love it. Thank you for saying that. And with that, we're going to read the proclamation. Do you want to kick us off?
Okay. Montgomery County, County Council, Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas April is a time to recognize the contributions of therapy animals with Therapy Dog Appreciation Day, observed on April 11th, and today's not April 21st, and National Therapy Animal Day on April 30th. Got it.
We're celebrating the month.
The dates confuse
No,
me.
it's because
It's right. I got it now.
Yeah. There are two special days in this month related to therapy dogs, and we're celebrating the entire month. So whereas the therapy animal teams made up of dedicated handlers and their animals bring comfort, joy, and healing to members of our community, including students, seniors, patients, and veterans, and
whereas therapy dog organizations across Montgomery County provide thousands of visits each year to schools, libraries, hospitals, courts, senior living communities, and other places where residents benefit from comfort, emotional support, and connection. And
whereas these therapy animals and their handlers offer a calming presence that helps reduce stress and anxiety ease depression, support students in learning environments, and strengthen the human-animal bond. And
Whereas therapy animals teams also step up in times of crisis, often responding quickly to provide comfort and support during and after traumatic events. And you can just take it home.
okay. Whereas the council recognizes the positive impact these partnerships have on residents of all ages and celebrates the compassion, service, and teamwork shown by therapy animals and their handlers. Now, therefore, be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims April 2026 as Therapy Animal Appreciation Month in Montgomery County and expresses its sincere appreciation to organizations, volunteers, handlers, and the therapy animals, especially our furry friends who bring comfort, healing, and connection to our community. Presented on this day, April 21st of year 2026 by Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez and Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom. Thank you so much for being here today. Is it on? Oh. We're moving on to general business. There are no announcements and no minutes to approve this week. So we are going to agenda item 1. It's a public hearing on council's consideration of the FY27 real property tax rate increase. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for April 29, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the council's consideration should do so by the close of business on April 22nd, 2026. As a reminder of our public hearing testimony guidelines, your comments must be limited to issues relevant to the public hearing topic for which you are testifying and are appropriate for a public meeting. You will hear a tone when your time is up, and we appreciate everyone abiding by their allotted time. I'm going to call your name, and please come forward. We're going to start with Angela Franco, Pratneet Bajaj, Russell Brazil, Glenn Wright, Charles Berman, and Ms. Franco, you get 5 minutes because you're testifying for 2 items. If you can please start now, please. Once you hear the tone, that's it. And please do not clap or interrupt any of the speakers. Go ahead, Ms. Franco.
Thank you. Good morning, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, Vice President Balcom, and members of the County Council. My name is Angela Franco, and I'm the President and CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in opposition to proposals in the FY 2027 budget submission that would increase the property tax by 6.3 cents and raise the county income tax rate from 3.2% to 3.3%. Chamber opposes each of these proposals, and we respectfully ask the Council to reject both tax increases. We recognize the difficult challenges this Council faces in passing a balanced budget. However, the county must grow its way out of these pressures, even though current economic conditions make it difficult. One of the most pressing challenges facing Montgomery County residents and employers today is affordability. Residents, small businesses, nonprofits, and workers are acutely feeling the rising cost of living in our community. That is precisely why this council must do everything possible to adopt a budget that lives with its means. That requires making difficult but responsible decisions without relying on additional tax increases that further worsen affordability. Avoiding new taxes must start with slowing the growth of the county's budget. Over the past decade, Montgomery County's budget has grown dramatically. In 2015, the county's total operating budget was $4.99 billion. By 2026, the budget had grown to $7.6 billion, an increase of nearly $2.7 billion, or roughly 55% growth in just over 10 years. This growth has far outpaced inflation and put immense pressure on county revenues. Most recently, annual budget growth has averaged approximately 4 to 5% per year, even as residents face economic uncertainty, federal employment instability, and slower regional economic growth. During this same period, the size of county government has also expanded. Full-time positions have increased by more than 15% since 2015, contributing to higher long-term personnel, pension, and benefit costs that place ongoing structural pressure on future budgets. This unsustainable growth directly led to a recordation tax increase and a 4.7 cent property tax just 3 years ago, despite fast-growing and difficult to afford property tax assessments on county residents and businesses. We believe there's a better path forward, and one that could be implemented by slowing the rate of government growth, reducing the number of government positions, and streamlining services while still protecting core priorities. This can reasonably be done while still maintaining key investments in public safety, education, economic development, workforce development, and other essential services. The Chamber commends the many council members, including Council President, who have spoken candidly about their concerns with raising taxes yet again, and who have demonstrated leadership by calling for a slower rate of budget growth. In closing, growing our economy and strengthening our tax base requires stable and predictable tax rates disciplined budgeting, and a sustained focus on competitiveness and affordability. As always, the Chamber is here to support and help in any way we can. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Bajab. Can you please turn on your mic? There you go. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. I am here to testify against the raise in property taxes. I'm a Montgomery County resident and I live in Rockville. I have a small business that does federal government contracting, and we have suffered a lot of revenue losses due to DOGE initiatives last year and a lot of uncertainty with the current administration against DEI initiatives. So as a result, our revenue has gone down, we've lost employees, and also personally, I have lost income, right? Having gone through all of that, an increase in property taxes is not something that the residents can handle at this time, where you have high inflation, high gas prices, high energy and utility costs. So to live in your home, you have to spend at least 20% of your cost is going towards property taxes, which in itself is pretty high and makes it difficult for residents to afford. On top of that, the housing prices have gone up in the last 3 years. I just had an assessor come to my property literally last month to see if the property has changed, and because of a recent sale on my property, which means the property sold for more than 20% of the assessed tax value. So the assessment is going to go up, which means the taxes associated with the property is going to go up. So the county is now looking to increase taxes twofold. So one, to increasing the value of the property based on what the recent sales were, and also increasing the tax rate on it. So that's a double whammy for residents. In this point in time, as the Chamber of Commerce pointed out as well, is that the budget for Montgomery County, I remember when I was testifying here last year, the budget used to be $7.1 billion, and now the proposed budget is $8 billion. That's a 12% increase. Okay, nobody's getting that level of increase in income to support that. So I think it is up to the council to make conscious decisions. We ourselves as residents, when our income goes down, there is nobody giving us extra money and saying, okay, who can I tax and get additional money to fund my life? I cannot do that. I have to make conscious decisions, cut my costs down, reconfigure my life through lower spending. I think this is, incumbent on the council members to say, the times are not right, and, there is inflation everywhere else. How can we help the residents, not tax them more, right? So this is something that you have to consider. It requires making tough decisions.
Thank
but like
you.
everyone else, you have to do it.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Next, I don't see Rosal Brazil here.
My name is Jackie Bennett, and I'm here in his stead.
You are for GCAR.
Yes, I am.
You are here on behalf of. Okay, got it.
Yes, I am.
And did you register with the clerk? Okay. Yes. Okay. Go ahead. And what's your name again?
Again, my name is Jackie Bennett, and I'm here
Okay,
on
got it.
behalf
Thank
of the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors to express our serious concerns about the proposed 6.3% property tax increase. Our perspective is, and with all due respect, the fiscal cliff we are facing is mostly a problem that has been created here in Rockville. Our financial instability has been built on years of poor fiscal management and unchecked government growth. Every year, businesses, small and large, trade associations, Chamber of Commerce, and residents all come to this room to explain the damage that is being done, and we feel quite ignored. The Elridge administration continues to deny the realities of our local economy in his effort to raise taxes. If you all give in to his request to raise property taxes to 6.3% and raise income taxes for all residents, and they bake in half a dozen other fees increases that he has proposed, the problem will only get worse next year. Despite all the artificial revenue enhancement on the table, Montgomery County would face a structural deficit next year of over $257 million. It is confounding that we have a structural deficit despite the massive growth in tax revenue that residents are already delivering to the county. For residential properties, assessment have risen every year since 2015, delivering hundreds of millions of dollars in annual tax revenue growth. From fiscal year 22 through fiscal year 26, residential properties increase in annual assessed value between 6.4% to 6.9%. The average annual increase for all properties have far exceeded the average annual inflation rate of 3.8%. From 2011 through 2021, net taxes per residential property grew by an average annual rate of 1.8%, which was not that different from an average annual price inflation of 1.6%. Since then, with inflation at 4.3% average annually, net taxes on residential property rose by 6.6%. The county has already cashed in on this rise in prices, raising property taxes multiple times since assessment started to climb. If you raise property taxes, you're hitting residents with a double whammy and annualizing the pain. Residents are already paying more to stay in their homes. It needs to be said as many times as possible, a property tax increase will be worn squarely on the shoulders of our middle-class families. The decision to return us to a time when taxpayer money was spent more carefully is in your hands. You can set this right and leave a better legacy for the fiscal future of our county. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have Glenn Wright. Is that you, sir? Go ahead.
Good
You have
morning.
3 minutes.
Thank you for having this hearing. I am but a citizen. I'm not organized with anybody. I'm not associated. I am just a citizen. I'm not associated with an organization, but I appreciate you having this hearing and allowing me to speak as a citizen. You all have in front of you a chart which I put together. This meeting I know is about numbers. So what I'd like to do is give you some numbers on a personal reference. Although I am but one homeowner, one person, one voice, I'm sure I am not alone. I have lived in Montgomery County 70 years. First with my parents in Glenmont, and then as a homeowner in Wheaton since 1971. That's 55 years I've been in my home. I have paid income taxes since taking my first job at the age of 16. And of course, I've paid property taxes in Montgomery County for 55 years. I am retired, living on a fixed income, Social Security, savings, and no pension. As I'm sure you know, property assessment rates keep going up, tax rates keep going up, and yet my income has little changed over the years. Since all of these property tax rate increases are hard on a long-term resident senior. So as you can see in the chart, I have experienced a 66.5% increase in my property taxes over just the last 7 years. Again, although I am but one example, I'm sure every Montgomery County senior homeowner is going through the same hardships. And although your property tax credit for elderly individuals was helpful for a period, it only had a 7-year limit, yet I am still alive, I am still on the same property, and still struggling to pay the rising property taxes. And it is my understanding that this bill 45-23, property tax credit individuals 65 and above, is currently waiting further action. It's also set to expire at the end of this year on December 7th. As I pointed out during the Bill 45-23 public hearing last year, which I attended for the first time speaking publicly, Ohio is one state in the country that freezes property tax rates for homeowners at age 65.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming today. If you can please send the rest of your testimony, I'll make sure that it's shared with everybody, okay? I thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it, especially when people from my district come in. Extra love for you. Next, we have Charles Berman. Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you very much. Please feel free calling me Chip Berman, as Councilwoman Ludke, I'm sorry, I'm going to mangle your name. The councilwoman was kind enough a number of years ago to come in and see what we actually faced. I am the longest continuously operating licensee in Montgomery County. I was candid. I shared with you real numbers. And so here's a few more that you can consider. Since we sat, I fell and had 3 strokes. My business lost $1.9 million in revenue in 2021. I had to take a teaser loan from the federal government. I owned them $750,000 just to keep my people employed. As a resident, I've paid, since we sat down, $43,000 in income taxes. But see, I also pay 36% of the property tax because I'm a tenant. That, in the same period of time, amounts to $130,000. So, all in, I have spent $174,000 on property taxes. Think about that for a second. The people that I came up with in this business, I've obviously been here, Councilman Katz knows that, countless times. And unfortunately, if I combine retail sales tax generated by my business, the county is all in for $1.4 million. I work 7 days a week. I work 10 hours a day. I don't get paid. I live on debt. The total economic throughput from my business in 38 years, it's $54.4 million. Sales tax alone is $3.5 million. Staff years of employment, 782. So those are numbers. Under CHIPS rules, number 3, is you is or is you ain't. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today and testifying and showing your perspective. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the rest of the speakers, and they're virtual. So I have Ms. Mohit Segal. Is this person on?
Here, yep.
Please go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, council members and everyone who's here, residents. My name is Mohit Segal, 25-year resident of Montgomery County from Potomac, and also a business owner in this community. I'm here to oppose this proposed tax increase today. It just feels like yesterday, but I was just in that room a year ago when the county had proposed a tax increase. I remember testifying and telling you all about challenges that businesses and employees are facing amidst DOGE and federal job cuts. I had just come out at that point telling people that they no longer had a job because the federal government just came out and slashed projects that were sort of midway. Issues around job uncertainty, instability, people having a difficult time finding jobs has not changed. That reality exists today. Even though the county council did not increase the property taxes last year, they sure enough did increase the sales tax, the income tax, to generate the additional revenue. So there was no restraint shown last year by the council. You went ahead and just substituted one tax with another. All the county residents ended up paying anyway. I think that's something you need to consider as you put forth proposals like this in front of residents. So here we are now. We are looking at an $8 billion budget. And that really sort of raises a fundamental question to me, which it did last year, that if residents have to tighten their belts because of all the economic issues and all the taxes now that they're facing, why isn't the county doing the same? So, we all have to prioritize and make tough decisions, and so should the county. So, in addition to all the income tax that went up, our assessments have gone up. I think Jackie, Glenn, everybody made some really good points. So I'm not going to repeat all those things. But I want to challenge the county and say, why are we not growing the tax base? Why are we taxing the base more year after year after year? So there's a fundamental issue here. If you look around, our budget has grown significantly. When you look at our neighboring jurisdictions like Fairfax, Arlington, Loudoun, we're not really outperforming them. They are growing the tax base by attracting businesses versus just going out and taxing a shrinking tax base even more, which is what Montgomery County seems to be doing. So, I think we really need to look at sort of the return on some of these tax dollars that we all see as residents. And I think, the council should be aware that, that residents are more and more aware of this. So I would challenge you all, good money is leaving this county and the state. I would challenge you all to sort of really rethink some of the spending that the county undertakes, and to be a little bit more prudent and fiscally responsible moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker, Holly, is still not here, so we're going to move on to Paul Salatin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I live in Silver Spring. I support Council Member Fanny Gonzalez's initiative to hold the local property tax rate steady and to restructure the income tax. I want to sidestep debates over spending and tax levels and focus on the reasons why we should shift away from the property tax. First, the property tax is not a reliable measure of the taxpayer's ability to pay. A home is not a very liquid asset. You get cash from it when you sell, and you can only afford to sell if things like interest rates and demand are right. A property tax is essentially a tax on this anticipated future income that has to be paid for in the present out of the homeowner's other assets. Some homeowners have a lot less assets than others. The property tax hurts those who are struggling to pay their bills. Second, the property tax is inflexible. When times are good, people don't feel its effects as much. Their taxes grow, but so does their wealth. But what happens when the music stops? We're all aware of the impact of federal layoffs and funding cutbacks, and perversely, the property tax burden can get even worse in a declining economy. Because tax valuations are only adjusted every 3 years, and because of caps on annual increases, my own property taxes are still scheduled to rise in 2027 and 2028. Now, I can afford it, but if I had recently lost my job, like others have, I would wonder about the fairness of a tax that ratchets up when my finances and maybe my home value are dropping. Now, a third problem with the property tax is its lack of transparency. Renters may not think it affects them because they don't receive a bill for it, but it is surely passed on to them in the form of higher rents, just like other landlord costs. Our county says it wants to increase affordable housing, yet the property tax works against it at all income levels. Even among homeowners, the property tax creates an unequal hidden gain. Take the income tax offset credit. You have to be aware of it and apply on time in 2 places. Those who know more, who are often the ones who earn more, benefit from programs like the ITOC, while those who lack the resources and time miss out. So instead, we could freeze the property tax and turn to a progressive income tax system. Our tax levies would be better scaled to people's ability to pay. The county would be getting a fairer share of real wealth. Investors are now paying less federal tax than ever thanks to historically low tax rates that have been in place since the first Trump administration. When they cash out their winnings, a property tax wouldn't collect anything off those additional earnings. However, an income tax would. I'm aware that there are limitations set by Maryland law that mean we have to keep the property tax in place because of caps. And we like to see those things changed. But in the meantime, the economic downturn will get more severe. An opaque property tax is not a good path towards our future. We should be shifting to something like a progressive local income tax. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. We're going to move on to agenda item 2. It's a public hearing on a resolution to increase the county income tax rate. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for April 29, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the council's consideration should do so by the close of business on April 22nd, 2026. As a reminder of our public hearing testimony guidelines, your comments must be limited to issues relevant to the public hearing topic for which you are testifying and not appropriate for a public meeting. You will hear a tone when your time is up, and we appreciate everyone abiding by their allotted time. We have one speaker, and it's virtual, Ms. Teresa Busher. Is she on? Ms. Teresa, if you can hear me.
Yes.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yes,
Can
you
hear me
have.
now? Okay,
Yes, we
great.
see you. Go
I'd
ahead.
actually like to speak on both. I'd signed up for both, but either way, I'd like to get my points across. I grew up in Montgomery County. I'm 67 years old. I'm a veteran. I've owned my home for 26 years. No member of my family has been in the county public schools since 1964, and that was kindergarten. We all went to Catholic schools and did very well with that. I am opposed to both the property tax increase and the income tax increase on behalf of the public schools. The public school system has made many, many bad choices, as you are well aware. We now know it's in the curriculum courtesy of the COVID changes. We know about the lawsuits, foolish lawsuits that have gone to the Supreme Court, which Montgomery County lost. Clearly, there's a judgment issue here. I would suggest that the county schools and the school board need to be severely audited, and the goals need to be assessed for academic excellence, not for ideologic excellence. Second, you know it's expensive to live here, and it's getting more expensive to live here. We can't afford to have these increases every year on behalf of the public schools. So the public schools need to get their act together and get their budget in order and proper priorities. I would propose that you have a flat assessment separate from the property tax for the public schools. Everybody gets hit. If you live in the county, you get hit. It is not progressive. It's a flat rate. Everybody pays. Documented, undocumented, regardless of social economic status, regardless of ethnic group. No protected groups. You live here, you pay. End of discussion. And that's the budget. If you don't make the budget, then you can do what private schools do. They have fundraisers. They look for private philanthropic groups to help them through. But enough is enough. If you don't like that, then I would suggest you have a two-tiered system based on who uses the schools and who doesn't use the schools. A basal rate would be paid by everybody who lives in the county who doesn't use the schools. Everybody who uses the schools pays an additional fee, and they're responsible for any overage. They are aggressively depleting the asset, degrading the asset, and getting rid of all the money that's been saved for the schools. I feel very strongly about this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
And you did it within 3 minutes. All right. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to move on to agenda item 3. It's a briefing, FY 27-32 Capital Improvements Program Update. Again, this is a briefing. Feel free, if anybody wants to speak, please let me know. Go ahead.
Good morning. Naomi and I are here to give you a brief update on where we stand with regard to the Capital Improvements Program, the FY 27 through 32 program. Specifically, we're going to be talking a lot about where we stand with regard to general obligation bonds, since that area is the most significant affordability issue given the spending affordability process that the council has for that. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mia to give us some background and the assumptions, and then we'll get into where we actually stand, what we call our gap chart, and we'll be able to get into that and then answer any questions you have.
Good morning. So in terms of background, the CE obviously transmitted his recommended CIP on January 15th. His overall spending for a 6-year period was $133 million, or 2.3% over the previously approved. On March 13th, the CE also transmitted March amendments to the CIP as well, alongside the operating budget. As of today, the committees have held work sessions on all of the recommendations to date. These were then, most of these were voted on by full council in a straw vote. We are expecting additional amendments today to come over from the executive, reflecting April CIP amendments concerning General Assembly actions during their session this year. So those items will be scheduled at committee, or in some cases, depending on timing, they may go to full council to be reviewed directly. Finally, the council will take a vote on CIP alongside the operating budget in mid-May. So we are close to the finish line at this point. In terms of the key assumptions we are reviewing, there's a significant gap, which Mr. Levchenko will go through in a minute, but this is being primarily driven by the assumptions that the CE made in terms of the SAG and the GO bonds that are planned for issuance. That number is $290 million more than what the council has approved in their SAG that was affirmed on February 3rd, 2026. The executive is also recommending a higher PAYGO based on his GO bond issuance. That's accounting for $39 million more to the gap. The implementation rate, which is essentially the mechanism which the CIP assumes that projects will be implemented, is also contributing a little bit to the gap because of the higher GO bond issuances and PAYGO. The implementation rate is higher than it would otherwise be. It's about $47.8 million. That's contributing to the gap as well. The set aside the CE is recommending is $181.7 million over the 6-year period. This number will be adjusted as we go into reconciliation, but this does give us some set aside for future supplemental appropriations and cost increases as well. I'll turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to go through the school CIP briefly, and then we'll go back to the rest.
Yeah, in terms of the drivers of where we are today, one of the major issues is the Montgomery County Public Schools CIP. The Board of Education's proposed CIP was quite substantially higher than the amended CIP, historically so, about $1 billion up. So first, the executive had to deal with that with regard to his recommendations. And part of the way he dealt with that was, as you heard, assuming a higher level of bonds planned for issue in order to accommodate some of that, although he was not able to accommodate more than about a third of that himself. But that did set things up when they came over here for a gap, basically. We had the spending affordability piece, but we also had the schools request to deal with. So that was a significant component of the gap, and we can talk more about that. And last week, the council discussed the school CIP and identified a number of cuts that are assumed currently, even with this gap that we're showing. The other thing I wanted to note real quick before I turn it back to Mr. Mia, the executive has traditionally, and did this year as well, assumed unspecified reductions in the public schools, college, and park and planning budgets. These are basically negative numbers shown in the budget, but from the council's perspective, we zero those out going forward in order to reflect what the gap really is, because ultimately we have to identify whether there will be actual project cuts or other offsets to accommodate those changes, but we can't show negative numbers in the budget ultimately. So we had to reverse those back. So that's also contributing to the gap. I'll turn it back to Mr. Mia.
Sure. To note, executive's recommendation did include $172.7 million in cuts and deferrals to existing projects compared to the previously approved CIP. So he has taken a significant amount of cuts already. In terms of major transportation projects, the executive did not add funding in his recommended CIP for numerous transportation projects that the council identified as priorities. These are not cuts in the sense that they're simply where they were in the previously approved. They were not moved up any further. So these projects have been previous council priorities, and so they're currently essentially beyond the 6-year period for the most part. In terms of level of effort and systemic projects, there are significant increases in LOE projects that are assumed. We know that based on the 2024 Infrastructure Maintenance Task Force report, they're still underfunded, but there is some increases in those projects as well that is contributing to the gap. And then in terms of other revenues beyond GO bonds and current revenue, these include recordation taxes, which are up $120 million based on recent projections, but impact taxes are down about $61.4 million. Overall intergovernmental revenues are down $185.5 million. This is federal aid, state aid, and other sources from other contributors. So overall, GO bonds and current revenue, in turn, because of these other revenue changes, have reflected large increases in his recommended CIP. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lopchenko, go through the gap chart in more detail.
Sure. So the end result of all of this is a projected gap, and this number changes almost daily as events change. But on page 3 of the staff report, I show the bottom line, at least as of a few days ago, for the GO bond surplus or gap. And in this case, a positive number is good, and a negative number is a gap. So we are looking at about a $418 million gap in the 6-year period. And you can see how it is displayed across the 6 years. Actually, 27 arguably is one of the good years. It's a little bit less of a gap, but you see it quickly escalates in the middle of the CIP and later in the CIP. And there is a gap chart attached which shows how we get from all the assumptions that Mr. Mia mentioned, plus all the adjustments that the council has made to this gap number. So where do we go from here? Well, from a CIP reconciliation standpoint, staff will be working on that over the next month. First, we'll of course look at all of the projects that are before us. Many of them were developed many months ago. And so the first thing we will do is make sure they're all updated based on current conditions. Some projects may have natural production delays that we'll want to recognize. We need to recognize reality in the CIP. Also, revenue projections. We will try to get the latest revenue projections from finance. You've heard of a couple. We got updates in January, of course, with the January CIP. We also got some updates in March. And we have now April amendments coming over and the results of the assembly session. So there'll be additional revenue adjustments as well. But then we will have to look at potential additional cuts, reductions, deferrals to projects. And because the gap is unusually large this year, I would say in past years, 100 to 200 million would have been a significant gap. We're looking at much larger than that. So we will have to really open up a lot of projects, which the council has looked at and preliminarily supported in most cases, and we'll have to revisit those. What I also would say is, for the most part, what the council, there were not a lot of adjustments made by the council this year to specific projects, the exception being the schools. The Education and Culture Committee, as it has done in the past, had asked the school system how it would get closer to the executive's recommendation. You'll recall the undesignated reductions that I had mentioned. So the school system did provide what were called non-recommended reductions to get us back to at least the executive level. And the committee was able to recommend most of those, and the council last week also preliminarily supported those reductions. Those are not reductions supported by the school system, but they were reductions that the school system had prioritized at the council's request. So those are a lot of projects. But other than that, there's only a handful of projects reflected in the gap chart, and they are listed individually. So you can see, for instance, the Summit Avenue extension, that project was moved back into the CIP, so that's why you see negative numbers in the later years for that. Those negative numbers mean it's a gap created by that project moving in. You also have the some activity on the college. The Germantown Student Affairs building renovation was actually pushed out by the council, and the Rockville Theater Arts building renovation was pushed in. So those are some significant moves. But other than that, not a lot of change project by project, other than, as I mentioned, for the school system. So going forward, what staff is suggesting, and have noted in next steps on page 4 of the packet, we will try to work within a prioritization that the council has heard before with regard to the CIP. First, we have a lot of previously approved projects in the CIP. Some have seen cost increases, some are just flat. But those are the highest priority to try to support going forward. They've already been through a review process and been approved by the council. Unless there's some significant change in those projects, staff will try to identify those and build those into a reconciliation scenario. We also have, of course, projects that are already under construction or fully appropriated and moving into construction soon. Those are also a high priority to try to keep on schedule, since there's all sorts of difficult situations that occur if you delay projects that are that far along, including cost increases to bring them back. Then, of course, we have, as Mr. Mia mentioned, the systemic and level of effort projects. It's been a priority of the council the last few years to try to at least protect those, if not try to increase them as much as we can. So staff will try to protect what's in the approved CIP and see where increases can be done for those as well. We also have projects that leverage significant amounts of outside revenue, state and federal aid, contributions, et cetera. Those projects also obviously get more bang for the buck to keep them in. Cutting them out also cuts out that extra aid. And then finally, projects which the full council or the reviewing committees have identified as priorities. Staff will try to work with those and continue to work with the council as a body to identify what those priorities are. And this is all within the mix of some broader priorities that the council has, including our regular review of climate change implications with projects and the racial equity and social justice priorities, which cut across many of these projects. So those are the priorities we'll work to try to build some reconciliation scenarios for the council. But even with all that, given the gap that we have, we expect we will have to do some significant adjustments going forward. And with that, I guess we'll turn it back to the council president and see if there's any questions regarding this or where we go next.
As a reminder, every single vote that we had taken in committee is preliminary. So in mid-May, that's when the action actually happens, when we see the numbers, because numbers don't lie, people. With that, I'm going to turn it to our colleagues. I'm going to start with Councilmember Will Jawondo.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Well, I appreciate that you gave it. I don't appreciate the information. And you did it in a kind way. I quoted, Keith, you're so good at this, unusually large and significant adjustments. AKA double what we've ever had to consider in recent memory as far as a gap, and significant adjustments means major projects being moved out of the CIP. And as the chair of the Education Committee, there are only so many projects that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to solve this problem. And as you mentioned, we've already preliminarily removed or delayed many things out of the project to meet the CE's number. And the other thing you said that I just really want to emphasize, because it's been suggested, here and in the public, that this CIP was sent over unbalanced. But part of the unbalancing, or not in alignment with our SAG guideline that we passed, it was correct. But you brought up today something that I don't think gets a lot of airtime. MCPS sent over a significantly larger CIP request because of what parents and children and people have been telling us for years. We have a $5 billion problem. Water mains, mold, go down the list. And even what the CE sent over still doesn't address it, what they sent over. So it was $5 billion problem. The school sent over about $2.5 billion of it. The CE cut it again. You said he met another third. I think it's important to understand that.
It was about $1 billion increase
right.
in the 6-year CIP. The executive was able to accommodate about a third of that.
A third of $1 billion.
Within his revenue and
right.
Funding assumptions.
Right. So that means a third of $1 billion is 330 million-ish. So that was another 600 million that he just did not meet the school's request, which was already the school's pared down request about how bad things are. And we have to, you also mentioned that if we don't start when projects are in process and we don't address it, it's going to cost more money. That's also true if problems keep festering and we don't address them. What would the gap be? Because it's $418 million now. What would it be if we met the CE's number? There still would be a gap.
You mean the spending or the bonds plan
The
for
bond
issue
plans,
that the
yeah.
executive recommended? That was $390 million, although you also have the PAYGO implication with that too. But I mean, and like I said, the numbers are moving around, but that would probably get you most of the gap resolved. There would be other puts and takes we'd have to deal with, and the year by year still has to be dealt with.
Right.
So we don't have that laid out yet. But the walking around number is the $390 million difference between the executive's bonds planned for issue and the council's approved.
So that's like
spending
$38 million gap if you took the CE SAG recommended. If I'm taking 418 minus 390, I'm just doing the.
Right. Well,
I'm just
you would
trying to-
also have to decide what you would be doing with
With
PAYGO.
PAYGO, right, that's another factor.
If you if you're increasing the bonds to stay within the 10% fiscal policy for PAYGO, you would be increasing PAYGO as well by $39 million.
Got it. And so we're at 300 million. As I mentioned before, we've been there. We were at 280 for a long time, my time on the council. We're at 300 now. It went up 20 million. That's a number we were doing 15 years ago in real dollars. In order to meet inflation, it would need to be 550 million today. There's an HVAC in the last 5 years has gone up 3 times. I cannot emphasize enough how we have to start addressing this problem. And while we have increased it to 20 million, which was an increase of the reduction to 280, it is still in real dollars the same amount that we were doing 15 years ago when everything is more expensive and our schools are in even worse shape. And I really would urge us to reconsider this, the borrowing limit. And then the last question I have, you also said the CE cut $172 million in projects out of the CIP. Is that correct?
Right. Within the executive's recommendation in January.
Not just school related.
Across the board.
Yeah.
The executive identified or noted in his highlights that he had trimmed projects across the CIP in order to meet the numbers that he was able to put in his CIP.
Right. And then the last one is a process change. We need 8. How many votes and when would we need to change the spending affordability guideline changes?
Well, you wouldn't be changing the guidelines. You would be voting to exceed the guidelines.
Excuse me, yes. Thank you
as
for
part
correcting
of the
me.
CIP approval.
And that's 8 votes, right?
It's an 8-vote requirement. It will be done basically in concert with approving the CIP.
Got it. Well, I would this isn't the time to do that. This is a briefing, but I just wanted to lay that out there for colleagues and for the public. I think we really need to revisit this to start ticking away at these challenges. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I thought they were very important comments, so I appreciate it from Councilmember Will Jawondo. This kind of like flipped. Who was next? I think it was Councilmember Glass. Yeah, he just erased and then he came back to life. But it was you, right? Okay, go ahead.
It's kind of like the budget. Okay. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the questions that were just asked, but there's another element to it as we are working on capital budget and operating budget. As introduced by the county executive, with all the vast needs, and I don't think anyone is denying those needs. They are real. They need to be met. It's just how we meet them. If that budget by the county executive were adopted, what does that do to the debt services aspect of the operating budget? Because it has been said in various places and in various venues that the CIP is basically clear and free of operating budget needs. And it is a separate funding source. And it is a separate funding source, but it absolutely has an equal and opposite reaction on the operating budget. Can you share what that math is?
I don't have the specific numbers, but if we assume the CE's SAG assumption, debt service would be a relatively modest increase in the first year of the 6-year CIP of FY27, and that would ramp up as the the amount of bonds go up. So we had that information in the SAG discussion. Can send it out to you. Just don't have it. Top of my head.
I think it's important context as we are working on both budgets simultaneously, because any additional bonding capacity means there's even less money in the operating budget. Another way of saying that is there would be an even greater need for additional revenue on top of that which some people have already called for.
Right. One other element to add on top of that is PAYGO, of course. If we increase bonds, as I mentioned earlier, to stay at the 10% policy level for PAYGO, we'd be increasing PAYGO. PAYGO would directly take from the same revenue source as the operating budget, of course, current revenue.
So as we continue moving through this, I request that all of this be part of the conversation, so there is no cherry picking of needs, because they are all part of the same bucket, and that is Montgomery County taxpayers and how we fund all of these different needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you. I'm just going to add on to what Councilmember Glass said. I think for the council president and for the staff, and I think this might be a little different this year because this is a complex budget and fitting this in. But I'm wondering if we could work together and think about, as we get the reconciliation list, that there could also be a portion of that looked at, as you all are working on the CIP, what PAYGO assumptions would be, as well as debt service, because as we're getting closer and closer to the committees wrapping up, we all will have a number in our head of what is the gap we need to cut in terms of, or reductions, what does not ultimately end up in the budget, given different parameters. And we need to make sure, I think the number, potentially, if we go what the county exec wanted, 39 million in PAYGO in FY27, is that over the 6 years?
It's over the 6 years.
That's over the 6 years. So we should know what's in FY27, because if we did entertain that, that means that's additional cash we take out of operating, as well as debt service. So I think maybe this year, we haven't done that in the past, but on the reconciliation list or some document, that running number would also be helpful to have.
Right. We will work with Mr. Smith and Mr. Howard, who are shepherding the operating side of the reconciliation process. We make sure we are in sync and also present the options going forward and how they would adjust each side of the equation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, and great point by Councilmember Stewart. That's going to happen. We're going to have that coordinated and in sync. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. Oh, never mind. I see somebody who wants to speak. Oh, yes and no. Council Vice President Miran Balcom.
This is just a question. Our website's down, otherwise I would have looked it up. On Circle 1, the undesignated reductions, could you just explain those?
Yes. When the executive transmits his January CIP, whether it's a full CIP or an amended CIP in an off year, often he will, for the outside agencies, the schools, college, and park and planning, he may or may not include specific cuts. He did this year, he included specific cuts, but he also has almost always included, and this goes back to prior executives as well, a placeholder project with negative numbers in it to identify here is what could be afforded in the executive CIP for the school system or the parks or the college. But it doesn't explicitly say where those dollars would come from in projects. So that's why we call them undesignated reductions. But from the council's perspective, ultimately those have to be identified. So the first thing we do when we're starting our tracking process is we zero those negative numbers out and reflect them as a gap going forward. And then, and as I mentioned, it happened this year as well, the Education and Culture Committee, both for the college and for the schools, asked the agencies to identify potential cuts to get closer to the executive's recommendation without those undesignated reductions. So not that they do a new request, but they provide their priorities for if they were forced to cut, how they would do it. And then the committee reviewed that, and then the council took that up last week with regard to the school system and preliminarily recommended a lot of those cuts in order to really deal with the undesignated reduction issue.
Okay, so just basically he puts a plug number in and lets us figure it out?
In short, yes. I will say there were other cuts as well. There were designated reductions and undesignated reductions in the CIP.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That was a great point to clarify. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. We have a lot of work to do ahead of us, and I trust that we're going to get through this, guys. I know we feel very stressed, but I trust that each one of us will make it happen. Even with our differences, somehow it will work out. And we're going to move on. Thank you for being here today. We're going to move on to our legislative session. This is day number 10, agenda item 4. Call of bills for final reading. This is another exciting one. Is expedited bill 13-26, building permits, immigration detention facility, the ICE Out Act. The Economic Development Committee recommends enactment. That's my committee and the chair. It was unanimous, although I'm going to ask council staff to walk through the packet. There was one amendment that it was brought up by Councilmember Lukey, and the committee split on that one. That's all I'm going to say about it. And I know the lead sponsor of the bill, Councilmember Glass, do you want to speak before I turn it to staff? Would you like to? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Council President and Madam Chair. We have seen the inhumane and illegal actions of the Trump administration and the actions that ICE is having a chilling effect here in our own community and across the country. We're seeing ICE detention facilities opening nationwide, even here in Maryland, just up in Washington County near Hagerstown. And that reality demands a response. And today we are providing one. Today we will pass the ICE Out Act, which will prevent privately owned detention centers from opening in Montgomery County. And the ICE Out Act is very simple. It prohibits the Department of Permitting Services from issuing permits and use and occupancy permits for privately owned immigration detention facilities. Some jurisdictions are actually behind the ball and are working to revoke permits as those facilities are being built. But we are being proactive to protect our immigrant neighbors. It is notable that after we introduced the ICE Out Act, other jurisdictions are adopting this same exact legislation, and we are setting an example across Maryland and the region. And this ICE Out Act ensures that our permitting process cannot be exploited by ICE. We have to use every tool available. Montgomery County embraces our diversity, and we must protect our diversity. I want to thank Council President for her work on this in committee at full council. I want to express my appreciation to all members of this body for signing on as this legislation was introduced. And from my office, I want to extend my personal appreciation to Hope Klein and Valeria Carranza for their work on this over the last few months. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Before I open it to council members, I'm going to turn it to council staff so they can go through the packet. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. So if we're going through the packet today, I'm actually going to jump to page 4 of the staff report with a bit of an update for you. So on April 13th, 2026, the General Assembly did pass HB 1017. The bill is crafted in a interesting way. So the details are as follows. There's a section 1 of the bill, which would prohibit a state or local government from approving the construction or operation of a building to be for a private entity to do a detention facility. And then the definition, sort of part 2 of the definition, notes that that includes immigration detention facilities. So in sum, what the state bill says is all private detention centers are prohibited. The state did add a contingency clause that said if Section 1 is overturned, then do Section 2 instead. What that section does is it prohibits the state or local government from approving a private detention facility if it's not expressly allowed in the underlying zone. How that affects the bill before us, I do not believe that Bill 1326 would be preempted because it doesn't conflict, and there's nothing explicit in the state bill saying we can't do basically the exact same thing under the Section 1 version of the bill. And then even if that contingency clause is triggered, these private detention centers wouldn't be allowed in our underlining zoning if the bill passed. So either way, the county is covered whether you pass the bill or not. So going on to committee, the committee did unanimously recommend approval of the bill, but Councilmember Lukey had presented an amendment. What that amendment would do would say that DPS is prohibited from issuing the building permit or the use and occupancy permit if the applicant did not follow NEPA or the APA. NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act. When the federal government is taking a major action, they're supposed to follow this process that has a lot of environmental and health and safety checks. That is actually the basis of the Attorney General's suit against DHS at this time, and it's been used across the country to stop these detention facilities since the current administration is not going through the proper channels. So the language of that amendment is on page 5 of your staff report. DPS was at the Econ Committee work session, which was very helpful. They confirmed that similar processes are followed in other jurisdictions. For example, in DC, they make federal applicants follow this, even if they're using that private contractor. They said to implement it here, they would come up with a checklist system to just make sure it was followed before they approved any of those permits. The committee voted 2-2 on that amendment, and so it is before you today. And I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Don Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. Sorry, this has not been a positive day for technology here in the council office building. And thank you so much for going over what where House Bill 1017 landed. And there have been a lot of moving parts, and I appreciate the committee and the level of attention to the discussion we had at committee about my proposed amendment. And so we're in a slightly different posture now, right? The state bill essentially does everything that the bill that Councilmember Glass's bill as written does. They cover the same space. So passing the ICE Out Act as written does not give us an additional tool above and beyond what the state has now authorized with the passage of House Bill 17, which was passed as an emergency measure, correct? Okay, and while I know we're in the very beginning phases of bill signings in Annapolis, they are rolling along. And so, I would anticipate that this will be signed soon. And I appreciate some of the phrasing or the mechanics of House Bill 17 are interesting, different. But, difficult times call for difficult measures, and I appreciate the work they did on getting the contingencies built into that legislation in the event that Part 1 is found to be unconstitutional or problematic, legally problematic in that kind of way. Presently, under our existing zoning authority in Montgomery County, absent what if we're in Section 2, right? Let's say the state bill gets challenged, Part 1 is found to be unconstitutional, and we land in Section 2. Are we covered here without further legislation, or should we take more action to prevent, again, the same types of things? And I certainly still believe that adding the amendment language that I have proposed helps us get to real tools to give something tangible to hold the federal government accountable, an administration that does not follow the law.
that does not do what it is supposed to do under federal law, let alone state and local law. So could you speak to that?
I can. So to answer that question, I would jump to our favorite code, the zoning ordinance. And so currently under zoning, and I think this had come up in working with the bill originally, if we got an application for detention center, it would fall under a public use, which is permitted by right in every zone. But the state bill actually says that it has to expressly say an immigration detention center. And so even without our zoning changing, it would still be prohibited because our zoning does not get as specific as the state law says a detention center would need to be.
All right. So I want to make sure I understand that. Right now, could the federal government, I want to be careful with my pronouns. Could the federal government, get a by right use on any of our zoning presently to do a detention center, whether it's them directly or whether they have contracted with a private entity to do so?
No.
Right.
Under section, and we're talking here under section 2, if that contingency is triggered, because that's when they would look at our zoning.
Right.
So under the state bill, the language says, and I just pulled it up, thank you, a general zoning classification authorizing government, public, or institutional uses does not constitute express authorization for building, structure, real property to be used as a detention facility. So our current just public use would not be sufficient, and that's why it would still be prohibited.
Okay, so we are in fact covered, Montgomery County, under both sections 1 and sections 2. Should section 1 of House Bill 1017 fail, and we are left with just section 2, as is under our existing zoning law, we are covered.
Correct.
Okay, and then in House Bill 1017, the language of part, I think it's part 1-103, clearly calls out a unit of local government as a county, and then says may not approve the construction or operation of a building, a structure, or other. So construction is the building permit part of what is proposed in the ICE Out Act, and operation of a building is the use and occupancy permit part of the ICE Out Act. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Okay, so that is already covered now under state law. And I understand that the House Bill 1017 did not include a very specific set of preemption language the way that the masking bill did, right? And we already took that up in another committee, and we've dealt with all the nuance related to that. And that bill was not an emergency bill, but this one is. So I'm trying to understand what, if anything, the ICE Out Act as written gets Montgomery County, or does for Montgomery County now that House Bill 1017 has passed. What is the net effect? That's what I want to know.
The net effect would be that it would, I'll say, mimic, copy, duplicate, one of those synonyms, the state law. So we would have a similar law on the books, but yes, without it, the effect would still be the same in that under state law, assuming it's not overturned. DPS either way at this moment would be denying those permits.
Okay. And then in House Bill 1017, there was a very specific definition of detention facility, which I thought was great. And so I wanted to speak about that, and whether, again, even if we as a body, because we are all co-lead sponsors of this bill, if we move forward with adopting this anyway, even though it's duplicative of what the state has now done, and I get it, we were all trying to do whatever we could do in the moment, because you don't know what's going to land by 11:59 p.m. on sine die. But would it be better to make sure that our definition of detention facility does not conflict with or create confusion with the language that is used in the state bill?
So I guess to answer that, I'd say the difference between the definition in Bill 1326 and in the state bill is the state definition is actually a little broader. It's
Right.
all private detention centers.
Right.
Where in Bill 1326, it is specifically immigration detention centers. In both instances, it is only for private, of course, for constitutional reasons. But the state definition is broader than the current bill.
Right. And I would ask that the body consider using the broader definition of detention facility as included in House Bill 1017, because there are constitutional implications, and that is the reason why they use the broader definition in the state bill, and that provides some greater measure of protection in a constitutional challenge to both House Bill 1017 and, of course, to anything we are adopting here locally. And so I don't know if you could speak to how that would look or what that would look like, or if any of my colleagues would second the amendment to adopt a definition commensurate with the state's broader definition of detention facility so that we are in more sound legal footing.
Sure. So
Second.
if
The Councilmember Luque made a motion. It was seconded by Councilmember Lori Sells.
Thank you. So if you go to the text of the bill on probably circle 2 or 3, since it's first in the staff report. So if you go to line 5, you'd strike the word immigration and it would just read detention facility. Means any building, facility, or structure used in whole or in part to house or detain individuals for civil, and then you would strike the word immigration and replace it with criminal. So it would say detain individuals for civil or criminal violations, and then add a second sentence that says detention facility includes an immigration detention facility. And then to make it read consistent, when you go to Part B, the prohibition, you can strike the word immigration since it's already in the definition.
We have a motion and a second and a great explanation. I know I have people waiting to speak, but we are now on this motion. So I think it's a great motion.
Thank you.
I agree. So is it okay if we can please vote? Are you going to speak on this motion?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead. Do you want to? No. Go ahead, Councilmember Glass.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Luedtke. Just like in committee, appreciate your legal acumen. And now that the legislative session has ended and there have been resolutions and laws passed, as has been noted, merging those two and finding ways so that there is less daylight, I think is important. But I also think it is important to note that prior to the introduction of this legislation that we as a council unanimously introduced, there had not previously been a definition. Is that correct, Ms. Nadeau?
Yeah, so the definition that was used before was actually in a different part of state law, so now it is within the section we would have put it in.
So can you succinctly state the evolution of a definition of private immigration facilities from before introduction to the introduction of this legislation, and what this motion would then evolve it into?
Sure, I'm trying to see if I have I have a lot of paper here, so I'm trying to see if I have the exact prior state definition before, but I believe it was in the correctional services chapter and it related to all detention facilities. So that's the definition that was used in this bill. And then HB 1017, before it was passed, included the word immigration, added it to the definition, and then after passage took out the word immigration and made it all private detention centers, but included immigration in a second part of the definition.
And so the motion on the floor further strengthens this position, correct?
Correct. It makes it consistent with the current definition that includes detention facilities.
And just to be clear, the introduction of the original legislation strengthened the position, and this further reinforces that. Well, given there was not a definition before, it's the evolution of a definition to protect.
Correct. So I would say the bill definition created a new definition for detention facilities that was consistent with the closest existing state definition.
Thank you. Thank you for the amendment. I'll support that.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor of the amendment that strengthens this bill, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Luque, for that great addition. Councilmember Lori Ansels.
So just to clarify, Councilmember Luque, you withdrew your earlier amendment that we discussed during econ.
Yeah, I'm not going to press that amendment today. I haven't discussed that amendment today. However, you know, should we end up finding ourselves, because this is, and I appreciate everyone's support on my amendment on the definitions. There are lots of moving pieces during the state legislative session. There are lots of moving legal pieces that we have all been dealing with since January of 2025. We are going to keep needing to deal with them. They are not easy, they are complex, and we are going to need to be prepared to change and adapt and adjust accordingly as things change at the federal level. So what I will tuck in my back pocket the amendment that I had, which was, and for the benefit of the whole, the other amendment was simply to force the federal government that it must comply with its own federal law, which is in keeping with the Constitution, which doesn't present any challenges under the intergovernmental immunities doctrine. And so we're just going to tuck that away because the state has done something that applies to everyone in the state. And should the need arise where there are legal challenges and for whatever reason subsection or part 2 of the state bill, does not remain, or I know they're anticipating issues with the first part, then we need to act accordingly, and we will come back and we will revisit that. And we have ways of being strategic and tactical, which is my phrase for how do you deal with a lawless federal regime. And then we will deploy them. But right now we can leave this as is. It complies with what the state has already done, and simply just says, hey, thank you, state. We're in agreement. We're moving on.
Yeah, so I just want to thank Councilmember Luque for joining us and clarifying that that her earlier amendment was not a part of the passage of today's bill that we're going to be voting on. I originally agreed to co-sponsor this bill because I agree that we should not make it easy or try to circumvent the process for barring any sort of detention centers in the county. And I felt that that amendment would have provided a pathway and make us complicit in the inhumane treatment of our residents. A few of us joined our senator on Sunday at an event where he gave an emotional, retelling of his experience with the federal delegation visiting the detention center in Baltimore. And I would never want to have that experience associated with Montgomery County. So I'm glad that amendment was withdrawn and look forward to voting for the bill as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that senator is the amazing U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen. I was there too, and he's spectacular. I think there's one highlight out of this whole discussion. The highlight is that we have great allies in the Maryland General Assembly, and they're doing work to strengthen democracy in this state. The fact that we don't need this local bill anymore is awesome, but we're gonna still pass it. And it's because our Maryland General Assembly is working side by side with us, and I'm very grateful to each one of them. So with that, I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. We're gonna move forward. This expedited bill 13-26 has been amended today. So is there a motion to approve expedited bill 13-26 as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember
Sales.
Sales, second by Councilmember Evan Glass. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lukey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lukey votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
Thank you very much. It passed unanimously. Again, we're so proud to live in Montgomery County. Moving on, consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Wait. You're going to say
You
something?
go,
Sure?
you do your thing first.
No, because you're going to take it out.
Well, I'll object, yeah.
No,
So
let's-
I'd
let's-
like to motion to take item number 1.
See, I'm
off the
helping
consent.
you on
There
the
you go,
record.
thank you. Item number A, I apologize.
Okay, there's a motion to remove item A from the consent calendar. Is there a second? No, you don't need that. Okay, fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you make your statement before we vote?
Oh, great. Okay. Well, thank you. So thank you, Madam President. The council is currently working to adopt a budget that will be close to $8 billion. And as we conduct that work, we are centered on using taxpayer dollars wisely and efficiently and transparently. And we have to continue demonstrating fiscal responsibility and accountability, and also our commitment to good government. That's why I have introduced an amendment to the Council Rules of Procedure that is a housekeeping measure that will ensure that taxpayer dollars are used wisely. And the rule is simple. It will prohibit the use of council funds from printing material that includes the name or photo of council members who are running for re-election or higher office 60 days before a primary or general election. At the end of the day, this is about good government, fair elections, and using taxpayer dollars wisely. Actually, in Congress, they have the exact same rule. They prohibit the sending of taxpayer-funded mailing from within 60 days of both primary and general elections. And this sets the exact same standard. That's actually been the rule since 1977 on Capitol Hill. And I know that all my colleagues are good stewards and want to be even better stewards of taxpayer dollars. And that 60-day window actually begins this Friday, April 24th. So if we are committed to good government and fair elections, the rule would need to be approved as soon as possible. Quite frankly, I would like it to be approved today, but our own rules of procedure prohibit that. So the best that we can do is have it added to next week's agenda, where I hope we would unanimously support it. So with that, Madam President, I would like to make a motion under Rule 5E to add this item to next week's agenda.
There's a motion which I do not support. Let me just say right now that each council member has an office budget, and the council staff in this building, including the legal staff, makes sure that each one of us don't break our own rules. So I don't think this is needed. And frankly, doing it during this time right now, instead of even bringing it up during the retreat, I think is wrong. And I will not, like I have said to different colleagues here, I will not use this time to politicize anything. So I need to hear a second to move forward. Is there a second for Council Members Glass's motion? Hearing none, we're gonna move forward. So I'm going back. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Moved by Council Vice President Balcoms, second by Council Member Will Jawando. Those in favor, please raise your hand. It's approved. With that, the council will now be in recess until 1 p.m. Thank you.